Welcome, the anointed ones. The greatest escapes are never impulsive. They're rehearsed in the shadows long before the world notices you're gone. Do you know that in real-life prison breaks, the average escape plan is quietly in motion for over 250 days before the first step is taken? Every tunnel dug, every tool hidden, every guard's routine memorized, all done without anyone suspecting a thing. Now replace the prison bars with their control over you, and replace the guards with their constant manipulation. That's exactly what you did. You weren't just leaving. You were staging a masterpiece. Your exit wasn't an accident. It was an operation. And while they were busy underestimating you, you were drafting blueprints in your head like a silent architect of freedom. Piece by piece, you dismantled the bridge between you and them without letting a single plank creak. They thought they'd catch you if you ever tried to leave. But you didn't just slip through the net. You left them wondering if the net ever existed. You had them so confident you'd never go that they didn't notice you were halfway out the door with your Oscar for Best Disappearing Act already engraved. And here's the twist. You didn't storm out in a blaze of chaos. No dramatic shouting, no slamming doors. You exited with such precision and style that MI6 could take notes. And yes, if James Bond had your level of planning, his movies would be much shorter. What I'm about to break down for you is exactly how the Chosen One pulls off an escape so flawless, so untouchable, that by the time they realize you're gone, you've already built an entirely new life they can't reach. Number 1. You didn't leave. You strategically disappeared from their map. You didn't just leave them. You removed yourself from the very map they were using to control you. People think leaving is as simple as packing a bag, blocking a number, or cutting someone off. But when you've been under someone's influence for long enough, they don't just track your location. They track your habits, your weaknesses, your predictable reactions. They know when you're angry, when you're tired, when you're vulnerable, and they use it all to pull you back in. You knew if you left recklessly, they'd follow the trail right to your next chapter and try to burn it down before you could settle in. So, you planned something different. You didn't storm out in one dramatic sweep. You slowly faded from their radar until it wasn't even clear to them where you were or what you were doing. You made your life unreadable. You reduced what they knew about your schedule, your feelings, and your connections until their mental map of you was out of date and useless. By the time they realized you weren't as reachable as before, they had no idea where to even start looking. The brilliance of it is in the way you turned their overconfidence into your cloak. They didn't suspect anything because you didn't give them anything unusual to react to. You played along just enough to keep their suspicions low, while in the background you were quietly cutting ties, changing routines, and locking doors they didn't even know existed. It wasn't a disappearance that happened overnight. It was a slow, deliberate dismantling of their access to you. What made it so powerful is that your absence wasn't just physical. You became mentally and emotionally absent long before you physically left. You stopped feeding them details they could weaponize. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped reacting the way they expected you to. Without you announcing anything, they were already losing their grip without realizing it. By the time the physical exit happened, they were left with nothing but unanswered questions and dead ends. This is why they can't stop obsessing now. They can't stalk what they can't see. They can't manipulate what they can't reach. They can't confront what they can't find. You didn't just walk away from them. You disappeared from the world they thought they owned you in. And you did it so flawlessly that they still can't tell when, where, or how it happened. Number 2. You starved the parasite before cutting the cord. You knew that people like them don't take kindly to losing control. If you had cut them off all at once, they would have gone into overdrive, calling, guilt-tripping, spreading lies, turning others against you, anything to pull you back in or punish you for leaving. So you took a different approach. You starved the parasite before cutting the cord. You didn't feed their ego the way you used to. You didn't hand over your emotions on a silver platter for them to pick apart. You didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they could still trigger you. Little by little, you made yourself less and less useful to them. It started subtly. You stopped rushing to answer their calls. You stopped telling them every detail about your life. You gave shorter replies, less enthusiasm, less energy. You trained yourself to not react when they tried their usual tactics. You knew that if you responded with silence or calm where they expected outrage or tears, you were weakening their grip. Over time, the emotional supply they got from you began to dry up. And because people like that thrive on a constant flow of attention, drama, and validation, you were cutting off their oxygen without them even realizing it. This wasn't about revenge, it was about strategy. You wanted them in a state where your absence wouldn't spark the kind of retaliation that could harm you. By slowly reducing their access, you made the break less of a shock to their system. By the time you left for good, they had already been living without the best parts of you for a while. And without those parts, their power over you had been shrinking every single day. The genius in your approach is that they thought you were just different or distracted, maybe even going through a phase. They didn't understand that you were intentionally pulling the plug one wire at a time. They didn't see that you were draining their influence over you to the point where, when you finally stepped away completely, there was nothing left for them to hold on to. By the end, you weren't leaving a feeding ground. You were walking away from a barren wasteland you had carefully created. And now, they're left trying to feast on the memory of the person you used to be, not realizing that person doesn't exist for them anymore. Number 3. You used their overconfidence against them. They were so sure you'd never leave that they unknowingly made your planning easier. Their arrogance became your greatest cover. They believed they had you figured out, your routines, your boundaries, your limits. And because they were convinced you'd always be there, they didn't watch closely. That false sense of security blinded them to the quiet changes you were making right under their nose. You knew how to play into their ego. You let them believe they were still in control. You didn't challenge their dominance in obvious ways. You didn't make sudden moves that would alarm them. You acted as if nothing had changed, all while you were making mental notes of every weak spot in their behavior. You noticed the times they were distracted, the patterns in the way they monitored you, the things they assumed you'd never do. Every one of those blind spots became an open door in your escape plan. People like them thrive on the idea that they're too important to lose. They think their presence in your life is permanent, that you wouldn't dare function without them. You used that against them. The more they believed you'd never go, the less effort they put into controlling your every move. That created the perfect space for you to prepare quietly. It was almost like they were building the walls of their own downfall, brick by brick, while you took notes on exactly where the cracks were forming. When the moment finally came for you to leave, they didn't even see it coming. That's why their shock was so intense. They thought you were loyal beyond reason, that you'd always play your role. But you had stopped playing long before you walked out. You had turned their own certainty into a trap for them. The beauty of it is that even now they're replaying everything in their mind, trying to figure out when the shift happened. They can't find the moment because there wasn't one big moment to find. It was a slow, methodical process that hid in plain sight. You didn't just escape their control, you dismantled it while they were still convinced they had total power over you. And now, the realization that they were outsmarted is eating at them more than your absence ever will. Number 4. You trained your mind to stop seeking their validation. You trained your mind to stop seeking their validation long before you made any physical moves. The real battle happened inside your head, where you quietly dethroned them from the place they thought they owned in your thoughts. While they were busy trying to control your actions and reactions, you were working on breaking their power over your self-worth and emotions. At first, it might have been small moments, resisting the urge to check your phone after a message, not replaying their criticisms over and over, or refusing to justify yourself when they demanded explanations. Those moments built up until you no longer needed their approval to feel whole. You replaced their voice in your head with your own, louder and clearer. This mental freedom changed everything. You stopped looking to them for permission, praise, or understanding. Their opinions became noise you could easily tune out. And once that happened, the physical exit became inevitable because they had lost their throne inside your mind. When you left the room, they weren't just losing your presence. They were losing the invisible crown they thought they wore over your soul. This internal shift is what truly sets apart a planned exit from a desperate escape. You weren't running away hoping to heal later. You healed first, inside, so that leaving them became a natural consequence, not a frantic move. They never saw this coming because you didn't broadcast your independence. It grew silently, fiercely, and permanently. By the time you were gone, they weren't just missing you. They were missing the control they once had, which is far more unsettling. The mind freed from needing their validation is the ultimate power move, and it's what makes your exit not just perfect, but unstoppable. Number 5. You stopped broadcasting your moves and became a private asset. You understood that the only way to protect your freedom was to stop broadcasting every detail of your life. They thrived on information, on knowing your every move, your every feeling, your every plan, because that gave them power to interfere, manipulate, and sabotage your progress. So you stopped feeding them the data they needed to control you. No more emotional outbursts that gave them ammo. No more updates that revealed your next steps. You became silent on all fronts, not out of weakness, but out of strategic strength. They could see you physically present, but you became a closed book, a locked vault. They were left staring at a shell with no idea what was happening beneath the surface. This shift to stealth was essential. When they don't know what you're building or where you're headed, they can't interfere. They can't gaslight you, guilt you, or trap you in their drama. You effectively cut off their surveillance, forcing them to guess and scramble while you quietly put your plans into motion. Being a private asset means guarding your energy, your time, and your emotions fiercely. It means recognizing that your life's most important moves happen behind the curtain, away from prying eyes. They lost their leverage the moment you stopped broadcasting. Without their usual access, their power crumbled. This isn't about playing games or hiding out of fear. It's about reclaiming your autonomy by becoming untouchable. You controlled the narrative by refusing to share it. And because you became a mystery instead of an open book, they couldn't pull you back in, no matter how hard they tried. Number 6. You let them think they won arguments to win the war. You stopped engaging in their petty battles, not because you lost your fire or your voice, but because you realized that every argument they won was just a distraction from the real war you were fighting, your freedom. You didn't need to prove yourself right or justify your feelings anymore. You understood that defending yourself in every little conflict only gave them more fuel, more reasons to hold on to you or pull you back in emotionally. So, you let them have the last word. You let them think they'd won the argument, that they'd broken you down or kept you under control. But in reality, every concession, every silent moment was part of your strategy to save your energy and your strength for the moves that truly mattered. You weren't losing, You were conserving. This was you playing the long game. You understood that winning a meaningless argument meant nothing if it cost you your peace or your progress. You chose to stop reacting, stop proving yourself, and stop feeding their need for control. By stepping back from the noise, you took away their satisfaction and denied them the power that comes from constant conflict. While they were busy celebrating victories in these small fights, you were quietly preparing your exit. You weren't just surviving their tactics. You were outsmarting them, keeping your focus on the bigger prize, your complete liberation. They might still believe they have the upper hand because they had the last word, but you already had the final move. You stayed calm, patient, and steady while they burned through their ammunition. And when the time came, you made your move. And that was the win that truly counted. Number 7. You timed your exit during their moment of distraction. You knew better than to leave when all eyes were on you. You understood that the moment of greatest risk is the moment when they're fully alert and ready to react. So you waited. You waited for their attention to scatter, for their focus to slip away into someone else's drama, their own crises, or the comfort of assuming you were still theirs. Your exit wasn't rushed or desperate. It was perfectly timed. Like a skilled general waiting for the enemy to look the wrong way before making the move that changes everything. They were busy chasing distractions. Maybe it was a new conflict, a fresh victim to manipulate, or their own tangled emotions pulling them into chaos. Whatever it was, their focus wasn't on you. They felt secure, convinced you were loyal and contained, and so they lowered their guard. This moment of distraction became your opening. You didn't just leave physically, you vanished emotionally and mentally long before, so your disappearance in real life wasn't suspicious. Leaving during their weakest watch meant they had no immediate chance to stop you. They were too scattered to organize a reaction, too invested in their own noise to notice you slipping away quietly. By the time they realized you were gone, the window to hold onto you had already slammed shut. This is why your exit feels like it happened in a blink, but was actually the result of long, patient preparation. You knew any premature move would spark chaos, so you bided your time until the conditions were perfect. It wasn't about speed, it was about precision. You turned their distractions into your shield and their overconfidence into your camouflage. While they were busy with everything else, you were calmly collecting your freedom piece by piece. When you finally stepped out, you weren't running from anything. You were stepping into a new life they couldn't touch, and you did it when they were least ready to fight for you. That's the power of timing, not just making your move, but making it when it matters most. When they're weakest, distracted, and convinced you'll never leave. You didn't just escape, you executed a flawless, vanishing act that left them stunned, powerless, and still trying to figure out how it all happened. Number 8. You made yourself emotionally untraceable. They might have had your number saved, but by the time you left, they were dialing a ghost. Calls came through, texts stacked up, but none of it landed because you had become emotionally untraceable long before your physical exit. This wasn't about shutting down or becoming cold for the sake of being tough. It was a deliberate, almost surgical detachment. You knew that as long as they could reach your heart, your spirit, your vulnerability, they had a leash tied to you, pulling you back whenever they tugged. So you pulled the leash out of their hands before walking away. You stopped giving them the emotional signals they relied on. No reactions to their guilt trips, no waves of anger to catch their attention, no tears that fueled their control. You built a fortress inside yourself where their words bounced off and their manipulations failed to penetrate. This emotional untraceability meant that when your body finally left the space they occupied, your soul was already miles away. There was no residual attachment pulling you back. no strings to yank you into their drama. They might have tried everything to reconnect, but it was like sending messages to an empty room. No reply, no response, no engagement. This level of disconnection is what made your exit not just possible, but permanent. Because they couldn't reach you, they couldn't break you down, and they couldn't pull you back. You became untouchable in the most vital way, not just physically absent, but emotionally inaccessible. They lost their power the moment you stopped feeding their need to control your feelings. And by the time you physically walked away, you were already free in a way they will never understand, no matter how hard they try to track you down. Number 9. You collected the receipts but never showed the whole file. You didn't just forget what happened to you or pretend the wounds didn't exist. Instead, you kept a detailed mental record, a ledger of every betrayal, every subtle manipulation, every moment they crossed a line. This wasn't about plotting revenge or holding grudges like trophies. It was about building a compass that pointed you away from illusions, away from the temptation to rewrite the story with rose-colored glasses. You understood that forgetting the truth or downplaying the damage is what traps so many people in cycles of pain. It's easy to romanticize what once was, to cling to the hope that things will change, or to blame yourself for staying too long. But you refused to fall into that trap. Your memory became your armor, a clear, unfiltered archive that kept you grounded and focused on your freedom. At the same time, you never exposed every detail. You didn't broadcast the whole file for the world to see. There was no grand reveal, no social media outburst, no public reckoning. You held your truth quietly and privately because you understood that showing everything would only give them more power or drag you back into their drama. Keeping this balance took discipline. You carried the weight of the truth inside, but you used it as fuel to move forward, not as a weapon to hurt or punish. This allowed you to walk away without the emotional chaos of rehashing old wounds. You were clear-eyed, sober, and steady, because your mind was rooted in reality, not nostalgia. This archive kept you from returning to the past, from letting go of your boundaries, and from giving them any chance to rewrite the narrative. You didn't just leave physically, you left mentally and emotionally too, because you never let yourself forget what they truly were. And that unshakable clarity is what made your exit permanent and powerful. Number 10. You left without giving them the closure they craved. You understood that closure isn't always about healing. Often it's a trap disguised as a neat ending. They wanted that final conversation, that last chance to manipulate your feelings, rewrite the story, and pull you back under their control. But you refused to give them the stage for their performance. You knew that by engaging in the closure they craved, you'd be handing them a weapon disguised as a goodbye. Instead of giving them that last word or that final emotional tug, you shut the door completely. You denied them the opportunity to script one more scene where they played the victim or convinced you to stay tangled in their web. By skipping the closure talk, you cut off their access to your vulnerability and shut down the cycle of back and forth that keeps toxic relationships alive. This wasn't cold or careless. It was deliberate. You knew that the idea of closure is often used to keep people stuck, to make them believe that unless they have that one last conversation, they'll never truly be free. But you broke that pattern. You chose your freedom over their need for control disguised as resolution. By leaving without closure, you created a clean break. They might be left confused, angry, or desperate, but that confusion is a sign that the power has shifted. They no longer hold the key to your story. You locked the door they expected to open and walked away without looking back. This final act of refusal is one of the strongest moves you made. It means you're not waiting for permission to be free, and you're not giving them any chance to rewrite your ending. You exited on your terms, unshackled, untouchable, and entirely your own. Number 11. You orchestrated a life upgrade before they could sabotage it. Before you made your exit, you weren't just planning to leave, you were planning to upgrade. You didn't step out into the unknown unprepared or vulnerable. You carefully built a new foundation beneath your feet so that when you walked away, you landed somewhere better. Whether it was new opportunities, healthier relationships, or deep inner healing, you made sure your next chapter was already taking shape, ready to catch you the moment you left. This wasn't a leap of faith. It was a calculated jump with a safety net you crafted yourself. You knew they thrived on chaos, on confusion, and on your uncertainty. So you didn't give them a chance to sabotage what was coming next. You sealed every crack where their toxicity could seep back in, closing the doors they'd once used to pull you down. By the time you walked away, you weren't just escaping. You were stepping into something better, something stronger, something built on your terms. That upgrade made your exit permanent because you weren't going back to a broken place. You were moving forward into a space where their noise couldn't reach you, where their power didn't exist, and where your growth was unstoppable. This preparation took effort, patience, and discipline. It meant investing in yourself even when the old life still tried to drag you back. It meant saying no to distractions, focusing on your goals, and surrounding yourself with what truly nurtured your growth. You didn't just leave a bad situation behind. You launched yourself into a new version of life that was better, cleaner, and more aligned with who you really are. That's why their attempts to pull you back now only fall flat. You're already too far ahead, living a life they never thought you'd create. Number 12. You became unpredictable after years of being predictable. For years they had you pegged. Your habits, your reactions, even the way you thought. They felt like they had you on a loop, a well-rehearsed script they could predict and manipulate at will. But then, something changed. You stopped playing by their rules and rewrote your own. You shifted your routines, altered your responses, and changed the way your energy flowed. Suddenly, you weren't the person they thought they knew anymore. This unpredictability threw them off completely. When someone's always predictable, they can be controlled like a puppet on strings. But once you became a wild card, you shattered that illusion. They couldn't guess where you'd be, what you'd say, or how you'd react. This wasn't about being erratic or reckless. It was about intentionally stepping out of the patterns they'd used to trap you. By breaking free from their expectations, you took away their ability to counter your moves. Every plan they tried to set in motion hit a wall because you were no longer playing the same game. You changed the rules without announcing it, and that shift made your final exit unstoppable. They struggled to keep up, desperately trying to predict you, but you stayed one step ahead. Your unpredictability wasn't just a tactic, it was a statement. It said, "I'm no longer yours to control." This transformation took courage and discipline because being predictable is comfortable, even if it's painful. But you chose freedom over comfort. And that choice made you a force they couldn't tame. The kind of force that doesn't just leave quietly, but leaves forever. Number 13. You let them reveal themselves fully before exiting. You didn't flee the moment things started to crack. Instead, you held your ground and watched as their true colors unfolded in full view. You let the mask slip layer by layer, until every hidden motive, every manipulation, every selfish act was laid bare. You gave them the space to reveal themselves completely because you knew that clarity was your strongest weapon. By staying long enough to see who they really were, you spared yourself the dangerous fog of doubt that keeps so many trapped. When people leave too soon, they risk painting over painful truths with hope or denial. But you refuse to let your mind soften the edges or rewrite their story to fit a better narrative. You wanted no room for maybe they changed, or maybe it was just a bad phase. This full revelation gave you absolute certainty that leaving was not just necessary, but urgent. It anchored your decision in truth, making it unshakable. You saw the real pattern, not the occasional mistake, but the consistent behavior that couldn't be fixed or ignored. Letting them unravel also exposed their weaknesses and limits, showing you where their power truly ended. It gave you a map of what to avoid and how to protect yourself going forward. By waiting for the full reveal, you didn't just protect your heart, you protected your future. You ensured that when you walked away, it was with eyes wide open and a mind free from illusions. You left knowing exactly what you were walking from and why, which made your exit not just possible, but permanent. Number 14. You made leaving look effortless, so they'd never see the blueprint. Your exit didn't scream drama or desperation. It looked effortless, smooth, natural, like it just happened without warning. That was by design. Behind the scenes, it was anything but easy. What they saw was a calm departure, but what you lived through was a grueling process of patience, planning, and relentless self-control. You hid every ounce of the struggle, the doubt, and the preparation because revealing any of it would have given them clues. They never saw the late nights spent strategizing, the moments you held back reactions, or the countless small decisions that built toward that final move. You mastered the art of leaving without leaving a trail. The less they understood about the blueprint of your escape, the less power they had to block it or anticipate it in the future. This invisibility made your departure unstoppable. If they can't trace the steps you took, they can't build a fence to trap you next time. You became a mystery, not just to them, but to anyone who thought they could control you. Leaving like this required discipline beyond what most people imagine. It meant swallowing the urge to explain, justify, or defend yourself. It meant acting normal when inside you were breaking free. It meant turning your freedom into a quiet revolution that no one saw coming. In the end, your exit wasn't just a physical act. It was a masterclass in control, resilience, and stealth. You didn't just leave them behind. You left them wondering if they ever really had you at all. Your exit wasn't a mistake, a whim, or a moment of weakness. It was a carefully crafted masterpiece of strength and strategy. Every step you took was calculated, every move intentional, all designed to free yourself from a hold that no longer served you. You didn't just leave. You dismantled their control brick by brick, leaving behind confusion and silence where once there was chaos and manipulation. You mastered patience, sharpened your mind, and shielded your spirit long before walking away. You starved the hold they had on you, let their arrogance blind them, and timed your departure perfectly when they were weakest and most distracted. You became emotionally invisible, unpredictable, and mentally untouchable, making it impossible for them to track, control, or pull you back. You carried the truth in your mind with precision, refusing to rewrite your story, and you refused to give them the closure they craved because your freedom was never theirs to negotiate. More than that, you built a life upgrade before you left. A future so powerful and real that their attempts to sabotage it only fell flat. And through it all, you made your exit look effortless, hiding the blueprint so well that even now, they're left wondering how you slipped away without a trace. This is not just a story of leaving. It's a testament to your strength, your wisdom, and your unbreakable will. You didn't just escape. You outsmarted, outlasted, and outmaneuvered those who thought they owned you. And in doing so, you claimed something far greater than freedom. You claimed yourself. That's the real Oscar-winning performance. The quiet, unshakable victory of a soul who refused to be anyone's prisoner. And now, with your wings spread wide and your path clear, you fly into a future only you can create. Unstoppable, untouchable, and undeniably free. If this message hit you deep, if it cracked open something inside you that's ready to rise, then don't just watch. Be part of the movement. Subscribe now and join a community of warriors who refuse to settle, who refuse to be controlled, and who are rewriting their own destinies every single day. Hit that like button, like it's a declaration that you're done playing small and ready to own your power. Drop a comment below and share your story or your breakthrough, because your voice matters here. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this with someone who needs to see that escape is not only possible, it's inevitable when you plan it right. This channel is more than content. It's a lifeline, a rallying cry, a blueprint for those chosen to break free and build better. So stay connected, stay hungry, and above all, stay unstoppable. Your new chapter starts here. Let's walk it together. God bless you.